It doesn't matter who you are, what you wear, what you look like, what's your ethnicity, your gender, what you prefer or not prefer. You have access. So everyone who wants to be at the table has not only a seat, but a voice.
This is the Gies Download, a podcast from the University of Illinois' Gies College of Business. I'm your host, Tim Sinclair, and today's guest is Jackie Price Osafo, Executive Director of the Society of American Archivists and recent IMBA student at Gies. From the time Jackie was a little girl, she knew two things. One, she loved information, and two, she definitely didn't love the inequalities she saw in the world around her. Little did Jackie know that one day, many decades later, she would find herself leading an organization that would perfectly blend with her passions.
I am responsible for strategy, program planning, management oversight of staff, advocacy, the voice of SAA in the spirit of advocacy, liaison with other organizations that work in the same space as the society. So there's other organizations who also move in the same vibration as society in terms of maintaining history and history as it happened, not as we wish it to see or wish it to be, and making sure that it is accessible and available for all who wish to be part of that space. We are definitely in the space and the commitment of diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, and that means for everyone. So if you are wanting to be at the table and you want to have a voice at the table, this is an organization that you want to be part of.
And while SAA might not be a household name for some, their work impacts nearly everyone.
We have about 6,000 members who work in the space of archiving from a historical perspective at universities, at major institutions, at libraries, at organizations. If you think about, Old Navy and the Gap, there's an archivist there. You think about Walt Disney's, there's probably an archivist there. I remember applying for the job, and Apple was looking to hire an archivist. The latest news is the American Archivist of the United States of America archivist has resigned. So they will be looking to hire someone else. The other thing is that our former president was in pursuit of stopping records to be released in regards to the January 6th insurrection. Well, what does the folks in the archivist say? We say that that Congress has a right to those records, that everyday people have a right to those records. So how do we protect your rights in terms of ensure that their civil liberty happens?
She didn't realize it at the time, but looking back, Jackie can see how her natural-born interests ultimately prepared her for the job.
My interest probably started a long time ago, and I had no idea what it was, but I was the person that was going to the library, and I wanted to see what was at the back of the library. So, there's a perception that archivists are the folks who hang out at the back and sort of in this hidden space, and they have access to information that you don't typically see. And you have to ask for it. So I was that kid. I had no idea what I was interested in, but I knew that there was some information in the back of the library. I wanted access to it. I wanted to understand it. Recently, I had an opportunity to visit the archives area here at Chicago Public Library and came across the plans for Douglas Park. And Douglas Park is a park that's here in Chicago. It's on the west side of Chicago. What they didn't know was that I grew up across the street from that park. So they had the original plans of that park. So if I wanted to bring it down to everyday perspective in terms of what is the general public, there's a plan laid out for how that park was going to be designed before it was designed. And I grew up across the street from this park, and I was like, wow, is this Douglas Park? And I mentioned the area. They said, yes. I said, hey, I grew up across the street. And it just sort of was, it was a magical moment for me to see the original plans of a place where I grew up.
Beyond what an archivist does is how an archivist does it. Part of me envisioned Indiana Jones traveling the world looking for historic artifacts, but Jackie says it's usually not quite like that.
Well, I don't know if they're traveling around. Sometimes, sometimes history is shared. There was journals from a soldier from the Civil War that was shown to me. And he just really wrote down what was actually happening. And probably not knowing that we were going to be looking at this information how many years later, and how the library got that information in their hand. It could have been as simple as his family donated it. So that happens a lot, that folks just said, okay, this belonged to my great-great-grandfather, so let me donate this to a library. Let me donate this to an organization. And, our perspective is, how did this impact history? What does it mean now? I mean, even if you think about the design of a building, I actually saw the original design of the beam here in Chicago, and that wasn't very long ago, but that information is being archived. As we look at COVID, someone's archiving what's happening during this time. So when we go back and we look at COVID 10 years from now, 20 years now, there's records of what happened during this time.
Is there a set of rules or standards or methods that are appropriate versus not appropriate, approved versus not approved in terms of what archivists do, or is it kind of left up to the individual?
No, there's an actual degree. So in order to be an archivist, you have to have a master's degree. So, there's the archivist who goes to school to be an archivist and holds a master's degree and follow a set of standards. And we offer education from a society perspective as a professional organization. And then that's that community archivist who happens to be that curious person who decided that I'm going to maintain this information. I'm going to work in this library, or I'm going to open this center. And that's the organic archivist or historian. And you probably see many of those than not. So I think about the church that I'm a member of. There's a historian. They just named her the historian. And she's the person who brought it to our attention that the land that was purchased in Evanston was purchased by a man who owned a farm. And he decided that he wanted to own a church, not necessarily be a pastor, but he wanted to own a church. And he purchased this land. And it's downtown Evanston, and it's in a historical space. And the church will probably be there forever because of the time period in which he purchased the land. So, it happens again from a professional perspective because there is a degree associated with. A lot of historians go on to be archivists. And then there's this natural sort of organic person who says, I'm very interested in the past, and they open up a center, and before you know it, they have a picture of your great-great-great-grandmother somehow, some way.
You mentioned the insurrection in Washington, D.C., and that, compared to many of these things, and I'm sure much of what you deal with on a regular basis was extremely recent. What types of things would be collected or saved or documented from a situation like that?
Emails. I mean, that's probably the most common thing. And text messages. Those are the things that folks are looking at and said, okay, what was communicated in any way that information was communicated from a legal perspective. Now we're not going to cross the line and do anything illegal or support anything illegal. But text messages, we even had an organization some bit ago, a state that deleted some text messages. Well, there's always a records management calendar connected to archiving information from a state level and then from a government level that says that you have to hold on to this information for X period of time. And after that, you're allowed to do X, Y, and Z. So some of that exists.
What led you to where you are today? Has this been a lifelong interest in history and preserving it? Did you take a more roundabout path to getting there? How did that work for you over the past number of years?
So what actually led me to this organization was I have spent my entire profession working for professional nonprofit association from, the Emergency Nurses Association, the American Society for Gastrointestinal Endoscopy, Water Quality Association. And this particular job here, I was working for the American Health Information Management Association. And four of my colleagues contacted me one day. The first contact came by text message and said, Jackie, this is the perfect job for you. Because they all knew that I was in the space of wanting to be an executive director. That's something I had decided some years ago, which led me to Gies. But they knew that that's ultimately where I wanted to move. And then I got another text message and a call said that I've been contacted by this recruiter, but I think this job is good for you. And another friend of mine did something very interesting. She was contacted to apply. She said, no, Jackie would be a better person at that job. So at the end of the day, I decided, let me go to the website. Let me, look at this. And what was so, I would say harmonious about it was that, like archivists, I like information. I like history. I like the past. It just interests me, and it has been, it has just from, a child that I've always just been interested. I've always, the more information you have, the better decisions you can make. The more information people have, that the better we are as people when we have more information and access to it. So I applied for the job, I would say, between the search firm and the SAA board members or council members, it took probably about 6 interviews for me to get through the process. So here I am today doing 2 things that I love. One is supporting associations, and the other is working in this field of information and information that gives us freedom, information that's accessible, information that when we think about it, we're caring for everyone. It doesn't matter who you are, what you wear, what you look like, what's your ethnicity, your gender, what you prefer or not prefer. You have access. So everyone who wants to be at the table has not only a seat, but a voice.
Is a passion for those things specifically that you just mentioned an outcropping of anything you've been through specifically in your life or had to overcome on a personal level or dealt with as a child? What gave you such a passion for making sure everybody, regardless of anything, has equal access to these types of things?
I was born in Mississippi. I was born in, I tell people I was born in a belly of racism, and, while my parents moved at that time, myself and 2 siblings to Chicago, which was still very tough. I spent every single summer there until I was about 16 years old. Experience hardship, experience racism, experience biases, experiencing all the sort of isms that you can think of, as a child, even as an adult woman. I have a brother, my oldest sibling is disabled. How people treated him, that would cause anger in me, like to the point that once I was violent because somebody called him a retard, and in my family, that word was not allowed. So, when we think about folks with disabilities, I grew up with that. That was normal for me. When we think about racism, as a woman of color, have I experienced that? Yes. Will I probably experience again? Yes. From the perspective of, working for organization, I know that I was treated a certain way probably because I'm a woman of color and I'm a female. Yeah. But even in spite of all of that, I've always treated people fairly. It didn't matter to me. Like, it doesn't matter who you are to me. You deserve the same right and privileges as anyone, whether you're the janitor, whether you're black, you're white, you're tall, you're short, you're small. There's ism against folks with different body types. I don't really care. And I think I was just born that way. Listening to my mother and father talk about the things they experienced broke my heart, and even them, saying certain things about certain folks. I said, it can't always be that way. Like, it can't always be that a certain group of folks dislike another group of folks. Like, I just can't holistically buy into that. Like, not every person of color is this, or every person of this is that. I couldn't accept that. So I always was open to, it's got to be different, and the world has got to be better, even in spite of what my parents experienced and what I've experienced. It's just got to be better.
Well, you've clearly worked really hard to put yourself in a position to make a difference and to hopefully over time make those things better. One way you've put yourself in such a position was by enrolling in the IMBA program with Gies. Tell me about that decision and why you decided to do that despite already being incredibly successful. What was the impetus for making that leap?
I knew I wanted to be an executive director. So I went out to see, this is me looking at information. So if you're going to be an executive director, then what is it that they have that you don't have? Because that's what you need to get to be competitive. And one was a certified association executive. So in my profession, that's a certification that association executives hold. So I went out, I got the certification, took the test. As a matter of fact, it took me 3 tries to pass the test. And while I was ashamed of that at the time, I'm no longer ashamed of that, but because I learned something every time. And now I have, I can tell folks that, never give up. And then I decided I wanted to get an MBA because I needed to honestly make myself stand out because I knew that it was going to be tough for who I am, for a woman and a person of color. And because not all executive director CEOs hold an MBA, but I said, Jackie, how do you put yourself in a place where you stand out? So I came across the IMBA program, and I have to say that many things attracted me to it because I started studying for the GMAT, and I was like, oh my God, there's no way. I've been out of school too long. And it was like making my brain hurt to do that, Tim. And I was like, this is going to be hard. And when I found the IMBA, it checked so many boxes. I was traveling at the time, so I could do my program on an airplane in an airport. I didn't have to be in Chicago. I can be in Taiwan and do my program. It also offered me an opportunity to learn and to network with colleagues from all over the world, folks who I have amazing respect for in Dubai and other places around the world, in Asia and Africa. I would not have been able to do that if this program wasn't online. So it checked so many boxes for me. And it also filled in the gaps that I needed to be an executive director. I needed more learning or more space or more information in finance. I was able to get that through this program. How do I continue to hone in on my leadership skills? Well, I was able to get that in this program. How do I continue to move in that space of looking for those blue ocean strategies, innovation, and creativity? I was able to get that in this program. I've met so many amazing people along the way, people that I will never, ever forget about, and people that I'm still in contact with. And I shared it with my friends and colleagues. And I probably have about 4 or 5 colleagues who did this program after I did, because I'm like, this program is amazing. It is what us association executives need. You need to do this. You must do this. And you have to do this.
I think some would say, well, in order to get noticed by XYZ employer, I need to have the MBA line on my resume and be able to say I have it. But sounds like it's more than just a line on a resume for you.
Yeah, it's an experience. It's the education. It's the knowledge that I gain. It's the knowledge that I will always have with me, no matter where I go. So, yeah, it is just more than that. Am I proud of it? Yes. And I decided to do this. I was 50 years old and decided to go back to school. And that was not easy because, at 50, your brain doesn't work like it did when it was like 18 or 19. So I had to stretch. And, I had some moments in the program where I was like, okay, I really don't want to do this. But no, Jackie, you started and you're going to finish it. Today is just one uncomfortable day, but that's okay.
Did you ever end up interacting with any peers in the program who, because it was online, you don't necessarily know people's ages and backgrounds, and then you met or connected and they went, wait, what? You're not 25 or you're not 30, you're beyond that by a few decades?
Yes, I actually connected. I would say the first face-to-face event happened here in Chicago, and I happened to sit at a table with some folks, and Brian, Lotus, and Marvin. I'll just give their first names. And we called ourselves the Fantastic Four. We just happened to sit at the table, and we traveled the journey together. And we decided, like after we met, and shortly, being in classes and decided that we were going to study together, we're going to finish this together. And the Fantastic Four walked across the stage together. We sat together. We hugged it out before and afterwards. And I was the oldest person in the group. I mean, they were like, late 20s, 30s, those just starting families or shortly after starting families. But did I embrace their youthfulness? Did they embrace my, I'm not going to say my oldness, but my maturity? Yes, it was a perfect combination. And am I still in touch with the Fantastic Four? Yes. Just an amazing group of people who, they brought a lot to my life, and I'm grateful for that.
What do you still hope to achieve? Have you reached your goal of what you want to do and what you want to be? Is there more in your future? What's the plan?
I want to be great at this job that I'm doing right now. I'm 6 months into it. Am I great yet? No. Am I learning to be great? Yes. Am I, experience some tough lessons? Yes, that's okay. But I want to be great at this, and it's going to take some time for me to be great at that. And I'm willing, and I'm okay with that. How do I continue to learn from the staff that I have, the members that I represent, the impact that we have on everyday lives, on the general public? How do I be great at all of that stuff? So I am not one for, this is the end of my journey. My journey will end when I close my eyes for the very last time. That's when my journey ends. And I even said, to my siblings, like, when I'm on my deathbed, I don't want to stop talking. I don't want to stop thinking. But bring me all the scars that I have, because throughout my life, I've traveled a great deal. I've been to almost every country. I've been to almost every continent, probably more than 15 countries. Bring me all those scars so we can talk about the stories, so we can relive some of the past. So when does my journey end? When I take the last breath.
That's really how it should be, right? Finding a career path that so perfectly aligns your purpose and your passion that you never want to stop pursuing it. And for Jackie, there's no doubt her work, her passion, will be preserved for centuries to come. Be sure to join us for the next Gies Download. In the meantime, you can learn more about the Gies College of Business at giesbusiness.illinois.edu.